There's a massive twist in the Celtic manager race today, and it involves Tottenham. We've also got a significant injury update that every Celtic fan will want to hear, a sad chapter closing on a Celtic legend's managerial career, and a worrying update on one of the club's most important players. But first, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel for more Celtic content. Sinisalo has stepped up in recent weeks between the sticks for Celtic, and now he's opened up about what it's like to follow in Kasper Schmeichel's footsteps, and the emotion in his words is clear. Schmeichel's Celtic future looks extremely bleak. The 38-year-old has confirmed he faces a rehabilitation period of 10 to 12 months after multiple shoulder surgeries. He's already had his first operation and was pictured with his arm in a sling, with more procedures still to come. His contract is up in the summer, and at that stage of his career, the brutal reality is that this could be the end of the road for him at Celtic Park. For Sinisalo, though, it's a moment of opportunity. The 24-year-old Finnish goalkeeper has held onto the gloves since Schmeichel went down, and he's determined to make the shirt his own. Speaking to the Herald, he said, "I feel sad about what happened to Kasper. The situation is not nice. I hope it's not a career-ending thing. I've always wanted to play. When the moment comes, you have to perform and keep the shirt. A goalkeeper is only as good as his last match." That attitude is exactly what you want to see. With a new manager arriving in the summer, Sinisalo's form between now and then could prove decisive in terms of who starts next season as Celtic's number one. It's a cruel blow for Schmeichel, but it may just be Sinisalo's moment. Now for the main story, as Tottenham Hotspur have sacked their second manager since Ange Postecoglou left, and the fallout could have serious implications for the Celtic manager race. After Thomas Frank failed to spark any improvement, Spurs brought in Igor Tudor to steady the ship, but the results under Tudor were even worse. The London club are now just 1 point above the Premier League relegation zone and facing the very real prospect of dropping out of the top flight for the first time in decades. Tudor has now been shown the door too, and here's where it gets very interesting for Celtic fans. According to TalkSport, Robbie Keane, the current favourite to become the next Celtic manager, is being considered for the Spurs job. He's mentioned alongside names like Sean Dyche, Adi Huttar and Ryan Mason. However, the same report states that Tottenham's primary target is Roberto De Zerbi, the former Brighton and Marseille boss, with approaches already made to try and land him before the end of the season. So what does this mean for Celtic? Well, if Spurs go all in for Keane, the Hoops could lose their leading managerial candidate to a Premier League club in crisis. That would be a major curveball for Celtic's summer planning. On the other hand, if De Zerbi is Spurs' top choice and they land him, Keane remains very much in play for the Celtic job. Either way, it's a story that's going to develop fast, and Celtic fans will be watching closely. In other news, Celtic have received a significant injury boost this Monday morning after fears that Julian Araujo's season might already be over. The right-back had been facing 7 to 8 weeks on the sidelines following an injury that sent him back to parent club AFC Bournemouth for rehabilitation. That timeline would have effectively ended both his campaign and his loan spell at Celtic, but there's now renewed hope. Reports from The Sun suggest Arjo will miss the Scottish Cup semi-final against St Mirren and the 2 league games before that, but Celtic are now cautiously optimistic he could return for some post-split fixtures and potentially even the Scottish Cup final at Hampden if they make it that far. The broader injury picture is actually looking brighter across the board. Arne Engels is expected back after the international break, youngster Callum Osmond is not far behind, and Alistair Johnston is already back in training, targeting a return for the split. With a title race still technically alive and a cup run to navigate, getting those bodies back will be crucial. The Araujo news is far better than it first appeared, and that's a real boost for the weeks ahead. In other news, a big change in Scottish football today as Celtic legend Scott Brown has left Ayr United by mutual consent after a dismal run of form. It comes as little surprise. Ayr have won just 2 of their last 15 games and slid down to 8th in the Championship, a massive drop from last season when they reached the playoffs. Brown and his assistant Stephen Whittaker have both left the club, with Ayr confirming training will be taken by the remaining backroom staff while they work on an interim solution. It's another tough chapter in Brown's managerial career. After a difficult spell at Fleetwood, his time at Ayr has now ended the same way, results ultimately catching up with him. He had actually been linked with the St Mirren job in recent weeks, which would have seen him face Celtic twice in the next 3 games, including a Scottish Cup semi-final. But St Mirren confirmed Craig McLeish will remain in interim charge until the end of the season, so that never materialised. What comes next for Bruni is unclear. He's done some punditry work in the past and may step back into that while he assesses his options. One of the club's greatest ever captains. It's never easy watching a Celtic icon struggle in management, but hopefully a fresh start comes along soon for him. Lastly, there's a positive story developing off the pitch that Celtic fans will be delighted to hear, and it involves away ticket allocations. Hibernian have been cutting tickets for Celtic and Rangers supporters since 2024, with the club citing behaviour and supporter experience as the reasons behind the decision. Empty sections at Easter Road have been a familiar sight ever since, but now Hibs are being forced to take a long, hard look at the numbers, and they don't make pretty reading. Hibs chief executive Dan Barnett has confirmed to the BBC that the club are reviewing the policy after racking up a £5.8 million loss this year alone, taking their total deficit over the past 4 years beyond £18 million. Those unused away sections are estimated to be costing Hibs between £150,000 and £200,000 a year. Barnett has now openly acknowledged the club are exploring ways to grow matchday income, and that includes the possibility of releasing more South Stand tickets to Celtic and Rangers fans next season. He made clear no final decision will be taken without consulting Hibs supporters first, but the direction here is obvious. The financial reality is catching up with the principle. For Celtic supporters, this is welcome news. Demand from the travelling support has always been there. The seats have been empty, while fans who wanted to be there were turned away. If Hibs follow through, it would be a common sense reversal, and it might just encourage other clubs to take a similar look at their own policies. Also, Yang Hyun-jun had a nightmare on international this weekend and is now facing serious criticism after a horror mistake that cost South Korea dearly. The Celtic winger came off the bench for South Korea in their friendly against Ivory Coast, eager to impress on his first international appearance since June. Instead, he endured a match he'll want to forget quickly. South Korea were already trailing 2-0 when a corner came into the box. It should have been routine for Yang to deal with it. Instead, he nodded the ball weakly back across his own goal and straight into danger. An Ivory Coast attacker was waiting and punished the mistake immediately to make it 3-0. That was effectively game over, and South Korea ended up losing 4-0, their heaviest defeat in almost a decade. That's all the latest Celtic news for today. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'll see you in the next one. Hail, hail.